My name is Dr. Rashmi Halker Singh, and I'm the Deputy Editor of Headache. I'm joined today by my good friend and colleague, Dr. Noah Rosen, who's one of the authors of a recent publication entitled Ahead of the Pain, Where We Stand After a Decade of Growth in UCNS Certified Headache Specialists. Welcome, Dr. Rosen.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to talk about a topic that's really near and dear to both of us.
So first of all, tell me about your project.
Yeah, so really I want to give credit to my colleague and co-author Skylar Kanegi, who is a student in Texas and actually was having difficulty trying to find somebody to teach him about headache locally. And he came across our paper that we did about a decade ago, trying to locate headache specialists around the country and comparing it to demographic data for expected migraine population. So he came across this paper and took it upon himself to start to update it and to see how we've done for the last 10 years. So what we did is we looked at U.S. Census data from 2021 and also regional rates of migraine by the 2018 National Health Interview Survey and compared it to the number of specialists that were certified by the United Council of Neurologic Subspecialties. So by 2021, there were 692 of them throughout the US. So we compared it to regional numbers throughout the Northeast, the Midwest, the South, and the West to see how we were doing in terms of serving that migraine population.
So that's really interesting because we always talk about the fact that headache specialists are, few and far in between, and we serve a population that's in high demand because we know that there are many people who have migraine, other headache disorders, but it's always, I think, difficult to come up with an exact number. So what did you find out?
Yeah, so overall, we're doing very well. That there's been increases, significant increases in the number of headache specialists across the U.S., especially compared to the growth in population. There's still the highest density within the Northeast, but all areas, including the South and the West, were doing better. In fact, most of the states that hadn't had specialists by the first time that we looked at this now had specialists.
Oh, that sounds really optimistic. Were you surprised by any of your findings?
Well, yeah. One of the other things that we looked at was the association with per capita income as well. So what we showed is that the subspecialist density was also associated with areas where there were higher per capita personal income, which suggested that those areas with lower income also had fewer headache specialists, and it became even more difficult for people to receive the care that they deserve.
I think that's really interesting. As you know, the American Headache Society really wants to help promote equity in headache medicine. So maybe this is an important target for many of us as we look for next steps. As I was looking at your manuscript and thinking about big things that have occurred in the last decade, we really can't forget the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm curious about what you think has been the impact of that on the growth of headache specialists and anything else you can think about from headache medicine and access to care. Do you think that's impacted any of your findings at all?
It's a very relevant question. So, on the positive side, the number of certified specialists continues to go up, and so more and more people are getting trained, and more people are getting recognized for the clinical work that they're doing in this area. So the pandemic hasn't stopped that. In fact, in many ways, some of the new technologies we've had have been very helpful. So telemedicine was not really available prior to the pandemic, but there's been great advances to move that forward. And even in those areas that don't have subspecialty, there's still some access to telemedicine services. Unfortunately, it doesn't really take advantage of all that an expert can do, which includes procedures like nerve blocks or trigger point injections or botulinum toxin injections or IV infusion of medications. But it definitely provides the opportunity for a higher level of care to more people as well.
Yeah, I think I would agree with all of those statements. As I think back over the last few years, at the height of the pandemic, I was able to see patients from different states because of the public health emergency that was going on, people who like had never seen a headache specialist before. And as I think back to interview season during those times, we saw so many applicants, and I know that was the case for so many programs around the country as well. There really was this renewed interest in headache medicine. Dr. Rosen, you and I have been involved in so many headache medicine programs, both at residency levels and I think medical student levels as well. I'm just curious, what do you think drives someone to a career in headache medicine? I think you and I both have our personal stories, but you, I think, interact with so many trainees. And I think it's really exciting that this whole project to look at this again after a decade was spearheaded by one of your medical students. So, what do you think are some of the themes that would drive someone to join us in this really awesome field?
Well, first off, the opportunity to work in an underserved, underrecognized, undertreated population is really an amazing opportunity. My colleagues from around the country, I collaborate with, I don't compete against. We feel that we're working uh, for a job that can never be accomplished, and that joy that you get from that is really quite amazing. And the other part of it is mentorship. I don't think I would be where I am without a mentor. And I think many of the people that I've seen here are there because of mentors that they've had that might have fostered that interest or kindled it and helped it to grow. So I think we're continually a process. You mentioned about interview season before. I've interviewed many residents over time, and I always tell them that we're not interviewing for residents or fellows, we're interviewing for colleagues because within a blink of an eye, our trainees are there with us trying to help. So I think that's what drew me into it, and I think it's still something that may be frustrating, may be complicated, but has not been boring for the several decades I've been.
I think those are all spot on answers. And, I love having you as a colleague as well. And I agree with everything you're saying right there. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I hope the people listening to this also realize the need and continue to this trend to provide care to all of those headache sufferers out there. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.